Bienvenidos a este programa de Sports. Aquí estamos con una figura icónica de Pilates. Aquí estamos en Pilates Workcenter en Mérida, Yucatán. Vamos a platicar con esta persona que nos va a aclarar muchísimas cosas sobre el Pilates, la historia, lo que significa el deporte y cómo ha evolucionado. Vamos a cambiar la entrevista, vamos a hacerla en inglés, un poquito diferente formato, pero vamos a tener subtítulos, entonces no se preocupen ustedes. Sean, welcome to Mérida. You've been here this week at Pilates Workstation here with Lily.
Yes, I have been.
And it's a pleasure to have you here. We've been talking before we're doing this this shoot. A lot of interesting things. I told you, I want to talk a lot because I want to have a material for what we're going to do here. So, Sean, you're from Philly. Oh, you're telling me
Originally, I was from Philadelphia, and I moved to New York in 1987.
1987. So you started. You went to Temple University.
Yes.
You had a double degree.
I had a double degree. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Dance, and I got a Bachelor of Science in Physical Therapy. And when I was there, I also did athletic training. So athletic training is that when you watch our football, not your football.
Right.
When somebody gets injured, the guy who runs out and takes care of him, that's the athletic trainer. That's for sports. So I also did that as well because I wanted to work with dancers, and there was no dance medicine. There was no place to learn it for dancers, so I had to go through sports. And one of the things that I did is I worked with gymnastics first. Right.
So then you went to New York, and that's where you started working with dancers, right?
Right. When I graduated physical therapy school, my first job was the Pennsylvania Milwaukee Ballet.
Okay.
Two dance companies combined, so it was Milwaukee and Philadelphia. And we would travel back and forth. And I did that for the first year. And then I decided I wanted to have an office. And when you're in Milwaukee half the time, in Philadelphia half the time, you can't have a practice of medical practice because if you sprain your ankle, I can't go, well, hold on, I'll be back in a month.
Right.
So I decided to move to New York because that's where the most dancers are.
That's basically the hub of mecca of dancers. And
it's very difficult to have a practice that specializes and really sees performers, and your practice is full of performers besides New York.
Great. So let's go back to something that we were talking before, because something that really sparked my interest. I was telling you if you like boxing,
right?
And you told me that not that much, but the history of Pilates has to do a lot with boxing.
Yes, it does.
There's a misconception because before I thought that Mr. Pilates developed his whole system on doing rehab for veterans of war. But you told me, no. That's not how it happened. So please, so how did it happen actually?
Well, basically, if in his writings, I'm the fifth owner of the Pilates business. When he passed away, it went to his wife. She sold it to a group of investors, and then they sold it to Isotoner, the glove people who make Isotoner gloves.
Okay.
And then they sold it to another student, and then he sold it to me. And when I purchased the business, I got all the records. So there's lots of documents and letters and things like that in the archives. And he states, I started my mat work in 1902. That's when he says he first started working on his system. Well, the war, he was in Germany. He was in England when the World War I broke out. So he was interned on the Isle of Man.
Okay.
With thousands of other German citizens. And that's where he says he started to develop his ideas for the different apparatus that he invented. But he didn't invent it all there. He invented, the first patent he had was just for a foot corrector.
Okay.
And then he invented the reformer, the universal reformer.
So, sorry to interrupt you. So the mat went to, that morphed into the reformer, or was that evolution? Or
his system it's a system. And the basic workout is reformer and mat together. That's what he taught. When you went to his studio, you would do the reformer and then you'd do some mat work.
Okay.
But when he also went up to Massachusetts to a dance festival, starting during the Second World War, 1941, 42, and in through the 40s. And when he was there, he started to teach the mat work to all the dancers.
Okay.
For this, their summer program type of thing. He would be there for the summer teaching. So he had a place in Western Massachusetts, like his summer home. And then he had his studio in New York City.
Okay. And mention what you told me about the boxing.
Well, he originally, when he was in the Isle of Man, he didn't do any, he even says, I'm not a physical therapist, and he doesn't do rehab. He basically does exercise, and what he was working with the mat work and everything because he didn't have the equipment. He only had the mat when he was in the Isle of Man. So he claims that everybody who did the exercise with him didn't die from the flu, the Spanish flu that came through during that First World War.
Oh, wow.
But it was also Isle of Man, so it was isolated, so it didn't really affect that many people there. So yes, nobody died, but did they get it? That's, so he would tell some tall tales sometimes, That was before the internet, so nobody, if you're in New York, you tell a story about what you did in Isle of Man or New York, they couldn't go look it up, and they weren't going to go to Isle of Man or New York to find out, or Germany to find out. So he would, he said he was it was descendant of Pontius Pilate.
Oh, really?
Well, that's the story. But we've also listened to his brother was interviewed and things like that. And what his brother said is that when they were younger, they used to get teased because the name was Pilates, that they were they were Pontius Pilates.
I got it.
But he wasn't really a descendant of Pontius Pilates.
Okay, I got it. So then you go to New York.
Well, before he went to New York, in Germany, before the war broke out, boxing was illegal in Germany. But after the First World War, things changed, and a lot of the interns in England, it wasn't illegal. So one of the things that they had that the internees do would they have boxing matches, give them things to do, keep them occupied. So on quite a few of those men that were there, when they went back to Germany, they opened boxing gyms, and that's one of the things Joe did. He had a very successful boxing gym in Germany. And, you have to remember that in the early 20s, because he immigrated in 26, Germany was having a very hard, after the war, Germany was very difficult business-wise.
Yeah.
You needed a wheelbarrow to go buy a loaf of bread. I mean, it was crazy how, bad it was. So he decided to immigrate, to the U.S. Some people will say it was because of the Nazis, but, Hitler really didn't come into power until the 30s.
Right.
So when he immigrated in 26, Hitler hadn't really done that much. It was much more about the economic conditions.
He was a painter back then.
Right. So, but he was very successful, and he was originally brought to New York by a boxing promoter.
Okay.
And his studio, where his studio was, it was 939 8th Avenue, which was very close to the old Madison Square Garden. So he set up shop close to where Madison Square Garden was, which where all the boxing would happen. Now, Madison Square Garden is now on 34th Street, but it was up in the 50s before.
Right.
So that's what he did. And then in the 1930s late 30s is when all the dancers started to come to Joe.
So they started, they heard about him and said that this guy does type of exercise that makes you stronger so you won't have injuries.
Right.
Which is basically what it does, right?
Well, that helps you. Mr. Pilates developed a system, and it wasn't based on what most things were based on back then. Muscle, weightlifting, build this muscle, build a group of muscles, look a certain way. He looked at babies and he looked at animals and said, how do they learn how to move? And he did that before, they started to do that in physical therapy in the 1950s. Well, he was doing that back in the 1920s. So in the beginning, he used to say, I'm 25 years ahead of my time. And then close to when he died, he says, I'm 50 years ahead of my time. Well, 50 years, 67, 50 years was just a few years ago. And look what Pilates is doing now.
Right.
And it's interesting because I collect old books on exercise. So I have, hundreds of books from the 1800s, 1600s, 1700s. And there's all these different people who developed their systems of exercise. And they were very popular when they were alive. But when they died, those systems died out. Mr. Pilates is the opposite. He tried to, he had a whole, there was a catalog that they made his home equipment. He had a home exercise system. So he had a home reformer. He had a home bench mat. He had a home wonder chair. He had a little bit of everything for home in the 40s, but nobody was ready to do it back then. If he'd have done that during the pandemic, he would have been a millionaire.
Yeah.
But he didn't, so he tried to do that. And those are the things that he was always trying to, and he was inventing new apparatus, but he didn't change the exercise as much. He changed a little bit in the exercise. People today say, oh, he would change everything, but there's 40 years of photo shoots where he's doing a photo shoot of the same apparatus, but it doesn't change. If you have new stuff, you would put new things in there, but I did, because if I give you an exercise and it does what I want it to do for the body, you don't need to change it because it does what it's supposed to do. And that's his system, is really a progression.
So going back to your story, you when you moved to New York and you hear about Pilates, how did that catch your attention? What drove you to go into this field?
So I was in physical therapy school, and I read an article in GQ magazine about this exercise system that dancers use to prevent injuries and stay in shape. And that's, when I was in physical therapy school, that's what I wanted to do. I was a dancer. I got injured and I went to the doctor. He said, well, don't dance and you'll be fine. Well, don't do what you're passionate. Don't do it. Well, that wasn't a good enough answer. So I started to try to, find ways to do that. And like I said, there was no dance medicine. So I went through sports first. And so when I was going through the sports, I read this article. So I said, I have to go look at what that's about. And none of my teachers knew what Pilates was. Nowadays, everybody talks about the core, but in the 1980s, nobody talked about the core. It wasn't until Pilates has gotten popular and gone down and got back, it kind of does this. And it's, it's on the rise again. And none of my teachers knew what that was. And then I used to do lectures for a physical therapist. And there was a man, his name was Carlos Santana. And he was the one who first started the functional exercise.
Not the rock star, right?
Right, no. No, he wasn't, not the rock star. But he would do these, functional exercise for physical therapists and trainers and things like that. And it was funny because his brochure, he says, enhancing, changing the traditional, right, for exercise, we're enhancing it. And what he did, and you look in the brochure in the background, there was a reformer, and a lot of the exercises he was showing were that they're right from the Pilates stuff.
Okay.
So functional exercise, Mr. Pilates was doing 100 years ago. So all the things that are popular, a lot of it comes from Pilates.
So you looked at something that, gave you the opportunity to go back in dancing. You're in physical therapy. You have a license in that. You have a degree in that. And then you said, this is interesting. I've got to look into this. Let's see where it could take me.
I went and took a session, and I got off the machine.
At the Pilates,
at the Pilates studio.
The studio that you later bought? Or was it another one?
I bought the business, but not the studio because it had closed by then.
Okay.
But I got off the apparatus, my workout, and I was like, I feel amazing. Why isn't this everywhere? Because I was learning free weights and Nautilus and Cybex and all these things that you're supposed to be using to get in shape and stay in shape. But as a mover and a dancer, it didn't really make sense. Where I got on Pilates and it was like,
this is it.
Light bulb went off.
Okay.
And I said, if I ever get a chance to do something, I will. And then in 1992, I bought the business. I got the trademark. I got the archives, and I started to build, and I worked with Romana, who was the woman who ran the studio.
Okay.
So her and I worked together to develop the training program that we have here now.
She was in the original Pilates.
Yes. She took over the business. So when Joe died, his wife inherited it. And then, like I said, a group of investors bought the business from Clara.
Yeah.
And everything in it and all that. And Romana was half owner of that group of investors. And she ran the studio for 20 some years. Is
she the person that has the original machines from Pilates?
I have originals.
You have that?
Yeah.
So I was looking at some pictures of, because there was a woman doing some exercise on those original Pilates workstations.
So
I don't know who that was. That
well, there's a woman I work with. Her name is Elaine Ewing.
Okay.
And she has a number of original apparatus. She's bought it. But when I bought so I bought the business, and then in 1997, he had the property he had in the Berkshires.
Okay.
I also purchased that. And when I purchased it, the studio basically the people who bought the property just closed it up. So all the original equipment was in there, but the roof had leaked and there was water damage. So I have since turned that into a museum, and I have the original equipment, and we've reconditioned and restored the original apparatus. So I have a what we call Pilates at the Pillow, because the dance festival that I used to teach at is still going on.
Okay.
And so every once a year we go and do a conference there. And, I've had Lily's been there. I've had a number of teachers from Mexico come up, and all over the world. We have Japan, Iceland, Europe, South America, everywhere we have people come. Australia, we've had lots of people come. So, because that was his dream, to have a training center. So we're trying to sort of bring it back.
Okay. And going a little bit back on the history of it. So you purchase the business, you start doing Pilates in New York for dancers, and that takes off. You have an amount of, I would imagine all the dancers would go.
Well, the physical therapy dancers I was the first therapist to work on Broadway.
Okay.
Physical therapist. There was they didn't do that before. That's what I'm saying. Dance medicine was really, it was like this big when I started.
Right.
And so now I've done over 180 some Broadway shows as the therapist backstage. I used, a number of those shows, we teach mat. I would come and they would get therapy, but as a preventative, we teach Pilates mat for the performers a couple times a week.
So the shows would hire you and say,
Yep.
Here's our dancers.
And it wasn't always just dancers, it was performers, because it's good for, Pilates is it's not a dancer thing. It's a people thing.
Correct.
And as a physical therapist, what I found is that the majority of people who came to me with injuries, not accidents, but overuse, like there's accidents, you get a car accident, that's not your fault. But a lot of problems that people have is because they move badly, or they sit badly, or they do all these things, posture, all this stuff, and it's habituated. And if they were doing Pilates, because what Pilates does for the body, they wouldn't have that problem.
Right.
And so when they come, I take care of their injuries. I'm a manual therapist. I manipulate. I go in. I do whatever that I need to do to help the healing, because you heal. I don't heal. I just help.
Right.
So I help you heal. And then I say, okay, well, now you got to prevent it. Right. So what do? I give them, would have them do Pilates in my studio. So I had physical therapy and Pilates always together.
Okay. Awesome.
Because, what I always tell I've had lots and lots of students in physical therapy and Pilates, and I always say, you have to give your client or your patient what they want, but you also have to give them what they need.
Right.
And when you come in, you go, this hurts. So you want me to address the pain, but a lot of times the reason why you have the pain is not there, it's somewhere else. And in Pilates, you work at the whole body, and it works it in balance, and it brings you into a relative balance, because true balance is a fallacy. Right? Because are you right or left-handed?
I'm right.
So you're not balanced, because you use one side more than the other.
Right.
And if you're right-handed, you're left-legged. That's your dominant leg.
Correct.
And in dancers, they turn. When you watch dance, they do a lot of turning. And it almost always, if they're right-handed, they're left-legged, and they turn better on the opposite leg. You ask any dancer, and they'll tell you that.
Okay. All right. So after you started, well, not after, but then you start growing your business into studios for everybody.
Right.
So,
well, I would have physical therapy and Pilates. So it was New York first. Then I opened in LA, Seattle, Chicago, Fort Myers, Atlanta, Philadelphia. And then we went to Australia. We went to Brazil. We went to Europe. So we were spreading, Ramon and I, and we were spreading. And then in 97, when I bought the property, I had all that stuff. So now I have the original equipment. So, basically I came up, with this term, the Pilates source, because, it's the business, it's the property, it's where it all happened.
Exactly.
And I have the archives, and we have the original equipment, and nobody else has all, like Elaine and I, we have the largest collection of original Pilates apparatus in the world.
Okay. And so when you started opening up these new facilities, was it your facilities, or you were training?
Well, basically, because of the trademark, right? I would always own 51%.
Okay.
And they would own 49, and then we would, started to grow. I lost the trademark in 2000. And after that, so today, you can go out and teach anything and call it Pilates. Like you could make up anything and call it Pilates, and there's nobody to stop you for that.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to get to.
Right.
Because my wife does Pilates. She's been an athlete all her life, and there's nothing like Pilates that really has been driving her need to never stop. Like she used to do a lot of cycling. She used to do a lot of other different sports. I mean, she's an athlete, but when she came in Pilates, she fell in love. And she started telling me that there's a lot of different Pilates. And there's people that, they say that they're Pilates and it's not really the real thing.
Well, what does the trademark do? It provides you and says, you have a standard within that trademark.
Right.
I like to compare it to like McDonald's, right? What are they selling? Burgers and fries. They started, and then there was Burger King. Then there was Wendy's. Then there's, it's all the same products. It's just a different packaging. The difference is they also had their, McDonald's had their trademark, so they had to go out and come up with a different name. What happened with Pilates is I lost because Romana, 10 years before I bought the business, Romana trademarked the name Pilates. She also sued people that were using the name. And when I bought it, she asked me to continue, so I continued. And then I sued a manufacturer and I lost. And then he went out and it was all contemporary. So he was changing the apparatus and changing the exercises and doing all this stuff. And it's interesting because during the court case, when he had his deposition, he was asked something and he said, well, if we were going to teach Pilates the way Joe taught it today and make the equipment the way Joe taught it today, we'd be getting sued all the time. Well, guess what he's doing today? He's making equipment that's similar. It's still not what this is. He's trying to copy it now, right? But back then, because that was where the money was, making the variations. And he came to me and he tried to buy my archive so they could put it in his training programs and make it up, make it anything, right? And that's the problem. Because, like I said, anybody can call anything Pilates in it, and they put the name on it because that makes money.
Right.
And also in Pilates, Romana, woman I worked with that ran the studio, we've developed what's now called classical Pilates. That was the training program. This is the program I bring here. I have a manual that Romana and I made. I produced it, copyrighted it, and put it together, took all the photo shoots. We did everything and it was the way she wanted it to promote the program that she learned from Joe.
Okay.
And that's classical, but classical is also a generic term. So now everybody says, oh, we have classical, but you don't know what they're, might not be
what they're really doing.
Right. And that's why, I have I have the Pilates Source, the New York Pilates Studio Teacher Training. I've trademarked those. So if people are interested in what Joe taught, and I'm not saying the other stuff is bad. I don't know, because I don't waste my time looking at it because there's so many variables.
Right.
I know what Mr. Pilates taught. I mean, there's over 500 exercises.
So if somebody that, all the TV viewers that are looking at this interview right now, if they're wondering, how can I get to an authentic Pilates studio? What do they have to look for?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, you have to look at the training, right? Because with no trademark, you can have a weekend, you can have an hour and give a certificate and say, I'm certified.
Right.
Well, the program that we developed, the classical program that I've developed with Romana, you have to take a certain amount of sessions first. And then if you decide you want to be a teacher, you apply. Then when you get into the training program, we have the didactic part, the learning part, but it's not learning the exercises. It's learning how to teach the exercises. That's what the training's about. And so you have basic, you have intermediate, and you have advanced. And there's also, after the basic, you're supposed to do 200 hours of observation. Then you do 200 hours of helping teach. And then you do 200 hours of teaching while somebody's observing you to make sure you're safe and all that.
Okay.
And then you get tested. And at 200, 400, and 600, there's a test. You get questions. You have to write everything out. You have to do it practical. You have to teach somebody, and I observe and make sure you're doing things safely. Because, the thing about the apparatus, when you have springs, right? That's an extension spring, but it has kinetic energy. It's in the spring itself. When you extend that, there's a lot of force there, and if you let it go,
it's going to go back.
It can you can hit somebody. You can do things. So there's safety issues, And that's very important. So we make sure that you not only know the system and understand why Joe did what he did, what's the purpose of the exercise, what comes before, what comes after, so you know how to progress somebody, because your body is not my body. Your history is not my history.
Correct.
We're all the same, but we're all different. You know, we all have a skeleton. We all have muscles. We all have a lymphatic system. We all have a cardiovascular system, but they're still different. And if you have injuries, or you sit at a desk all day and you have a posture and you have these things, what I have to do for you is different what I have to do for me or what I have to do for Lily. So we teach you how to understand and look at that and use the system, so that if you have trouble here, I can go to this apparatus or I can go to that apparatus. That's why it's a system. It's not one it's not like people go, oh, I just learned a mat or I just learned a reformer.
Right.
That's not Pilates, because it's a system.
So they go through the certification process, which is 3 levels, which I imagine is really complicated to get that certification. I've heard that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not. But in today's world, right?
Anybody can do it.
A lot of gyms, as long as if you have a certificate, they don't care.
Right.
So you have and everybody under the sun has a training program now, because they can make money, they can train people, but what are you really getting? And again, I'm not saying it's necessarily that it's bad. I don't know, but I don't have time to go look at everything.
Right.
But I know what Mr. Pilates taught, because it's got, next year is 100 years since he, emigrated to the US. So it has at least 100 years of clinical practice and changes.
Right.
But, the problem is Mr. Pilates said it does this for your body, right? Well, it does this when you work on that apparatus with the exercises that he taught. And if you read his writings, he basically says, I'm right and I know it. Right. And I know it because I did it on my body and all my clients' bodies, and I saw, these changes happen. So he didn't change the exercises. He keeps doing the same exercise. Well, what's happening now, they're changing the apparatus, they're changing the exercise, but they're still calling it Pilates, and you're not going to get the same results because it's different. And again, it might be good. I don't know.
But okay, so somebody comes in, is there something that they have to look for exactly, like the Pilates source? Do you have, because here in Mérida, the only certified Pilates studio is here.
Right. Well, yes, I've licensed her, and if you want to do Pilates the way Mr. Pilates did it, and you want the source, and you want the true method,
the real
this
method,
is where you come.
This is the only place certified in Mérida.
Yes.
That does
in Mexico
real
moment.
In Mexico. There's no other place in Mexico that has real Pilates.
Well, they may say it.
No, yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about.
I'm licensed.
Pilates is a source.
Right.
I'm talking about that.
The classical manual and training that Ramon and I put together. We did. I worked with her for 13 years. We put that together. We took it all over the world. When she passed away, I brought it. Lily had me come over 10 years ago. So the classical and the authentic, has been here for 10 years.
That's amazing.
But it wasn't popular back then. Now it's starting. I'm talking to you because now it's getting popular everywhere.
Yeah, I would imagine there's more than 5,000 Pilates studios in all Mexico, right?
At least, and they're everywhere else. I mean, there's now people making equipment in Mexico. But is it the way Joe made it? I mean, so there's all, and people copy it. So the closer it is to what Mr. Pilates taught and used, that's what they're looking for.
So it kind of branched off different when you lost that court case. So it just lost the trademark. It just went.
Well, and when that was happening, I said, that's what's going to happen. You wait and see. And what I said is exactly what's happening. It's buyer beware.
Right.
Because anybody can call it that.
Well, when did it start getting popular again? Because it's been, I think I heard of Pilates before, but it was, you would hear about it like.
So, what happened was when I bought the business and the trademark, that was 1992. I lost the trademark in 2000. Well, what did I do? I went all over the world and started opening studios, and other people see that, and if you come and get certified by me and you decide to go do your own thing, because, the people at Burger King, where'd they learn what they did? They got it from McDonald's first.
Right.
So you can do that. I can't stop you, right? So that's what's happening. And what's happened now, if you look at, I don't know about Mexico, but in the US, there's thousands of trademarks that have the name Pilates in it. because you can use Pilates, but you have to say in trademark, I'm not claiming that, but I'm claiming the combination of Pilates, the Pilates source is a trademark. So I don't claim this name, but the combination you can't use as a business trademark. So that's what's happened now.
Yeah, there has to be, you should be like, have your OG Pilates sign on your businesses, because that's,
the difference is I didn't do this to be like to make money. I did it to maintain the quality and integrity of his work.
Right.
And that's what I've been focusing on for the last 30 years.
Yeah. Like I told you before, I like boxing, right? So if I want to train at a boxing gym, I'm not going to go to a boxing gym that, is not a real boxing gym. I mean, that's really important. If you want to go to the source of what you really want to do, you have to go to the original,
right?
The Pilates source. That's really important.
One of the things, like there's in the US, I don't know if they have it here, is Club Pilates. And it's a franchise. And they have, all these machines and all this stuff. And they have all these other things besides the reformer. They have the Bosu ball and the TRX, which is not Pilates. It wasn't something Mr. Pilates invented. And I always just say, well, people get upset. The classical people, the people that are trained, they're worried about it. And I said, they're just going to bring us our clients.
Right. Which is a good part of
some people, it's cheaper, but it's not that much cheaper. And so some people will go, but that makes people experience it. And then they're going to go, what, is there something else? And they hear what you hear. So what are they going to do? They start exploring. And when they come to Lily and they go here, they're going to see the difference.
I think that's what happened to Lily on her story, that she started Pilates, which wasn't original Pilates, and she found you, she contacted you, or did she call you and say, hey, I want to.
Well, I first came down to do workshops, and I did a few workshops.
In Mexico, here in Mérida?
In Mérida.
Yep. Why Mérida? Why did you pick Mérida? Because of her.
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, she called you first, and she was like,
it was through her.
Come over here, like, do
the workshop. Because what happened is, when I lost the trademark, I licensed the whole business to a couple other teachers, and I sort of I focused on my physical therapy and my family.
Okay.
I spent 10 years trying to do the right thing, and I lost. So I was like, all right.
That was a long legal battle.
Right. And so then that was in like 2004, I licensed it. Well, in 2013, I had a patient who came to me, but was a Pilates teacher, and she says, oh, you got to go online and see what they're saying. So I went online, because I wasn't really online, and I saw all these stories and this stuff people were saying about Pilates, and I'm like, that's not true. Because I have the documents, I have the primary source materials that, like, no, that's not what happened. So I started to, come online and do things, and the woman I work with, Elaine Ewing, she started to see that. She invited me to come do workshops. She then came and trained with me and got certified. Lily did the same thing. She got trained, she got certified, so people start to see what I'm doing, because I disappeared and then I came back.
Right. That's good.
And I've rebuilt this studio, and there's a museum. If you want to, it's the bucket list. If you're a Pilates teacher and you're really interested in the work, the way it was done and taught, well, the studio and the museum is a place where you can come and view all that. I have a whole library of Joe's original books, his books, and there's in the connotations, he's making notes and things like that, so you can see his ideas.
Do you have a website? That
I do. Well, it's more social media now than, like I have the Pilates Museum Instagram page.
Okay.
I have the New York Pilates Studio.
Do you say to everybody what the Pilates?
So it's the Pilates Museum Instagram page. I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Which is the.pilates.source. And that's over 100 videos. And we did a whole thing where I did 30 years and 30 days. So in 2022, we went through and talked about the history of me owning from when I bought the business till 2022, the 30 years, and all the things that happened. Okay. And the history. So people can look at that kind of stuff as well if they're interested, because it's all about the history.
We got to get this video on your YouTube.
I'll put it right there.
Yeah, we have. So people really have to know where the OG source comes from.
And, one of the things that I do, like every Friday, I do a map. It's Ask Me Anything Pilates.
Okay.
So people can, DM me and send me a message, and I'll answer it. Like the last one I did was on, can you work with children? And I talk about, when and how and what you should do. So it's for teachers, but it's also for people who are interested in what it can do. So if somebody has a question about, can I do Pilates? I'll try to answer it for them.
Oh, that's great. What about in your webpage? Do you have like a listing of all the certified gyms or
there's not
studios?
So there's not that many anymore because everybody's going, when I lost the trademark, everybody went off and did their own thing.
Right. But I mean, I would.
So I have, right now, there's a training in Rhinebeck, New York. There's a training in Canada. There's a training in Mexico. So that's it.
Wow. So there's like.
I went big, and then, when I lost, because I lost in 2000 and then we had 9/11.
Right.
So business, in New York, it was very difficult. And a lot of the places that I'd opened were not fully functioning, and New York was supporting that. Well, when 9/11 came, New York couldn't support it anymore because business went way down.
What are your future plans with the studios?
Well, when
I'm opening more studios.
When people come to me and they're interested, like Lily, if they want to do things, I just started it in Canada 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, but she had also done a training with me. So people who are interested, that's what I'm looking to do. I'm not trying to go everywhere. I look at it as one seated at a time, right? I'm trying to make sure that when people do the training, that Joe's work is here for generations to come.
Right.
And what everybody's doing to try to make money, that's not what they're trying to do. They're just trying to make money for now and, I'm trying to say, well, how do we make this so that it's going to last and be here? Because what you see on social media now going all over the place, if that keeps going, it disappears.
Well, I mean, looking at the bright side of you losing that court case is that, like you said, it branched off to everybody and everybody started doing Pilates. And now Pilates is a common name. Like if somebody would tell anybody in the streets Pilates, they'll go, oh yeah.
They know what it is. They never know
what it is. I mean, before I thought, when my wife said Pilates, I thought it was like a rowboat. I mean, I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, you're going to go rowing?
Well, it's funny. Mr. Pilates' brother invented a boat bicycle thing that you could pedal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not off that.
I know. Side note.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Pilates also invented a boxing apparatus.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I have the blueprint for it.
Oh, I really want to look at those.
I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I have it here, but I can,
I'll definitely want to look at it.
It's basically, it was attached to the wall and had these little knobs and you punch the knobs.
Okay. For reaction.
And they were spring loaded.
So it would be for your reaction time and just cardio.
And there's you're used to the mat this way. He had a standing mat, and there's a whole boxing section where you're doing this and you're doing all the whole things for boxing as well.
Oh, that's amazing. You definitely have to show me that.
Yeah.
So and basically what you're doing is that you're opening studios based on requests from trainers, right?
Right. If somebody wants to do it, because it's not easy.
And how can they contact you? Do you do that through your main the Pilates source?
Pilates source. If somebody DMs me and they want to do it, that's what they do.
That's
but
what they do.
Like they have to do the training first. You can't just open up, because the part of that process is Mr. Pilates, the exercise is for a lifetime. When I teach, I do a chart and I say, here's life with Pilates, right? You're born and you go all the way up here and you're at your max. And then injuries happen, you kind of do this, and then you die. And that's what Mr. Pilates did.
Right.
But a lot of times nowadays, what happens? We go here, and then we start this way. And by the time we're at the end of our life, you still need somebody to clean you, to feed you, to, all this. And so and Mr. Pilates, he was like, I can do at 80 what most people can't do at 20.
Right.
And if you do this work and you're consistent, guess what? You can, it's the quality of your life, not how long you live.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's an interview that Lily showed me I think she sent me this interview this week of 70-something-year-old. How old was she, Lily? 75 años. La entrevista que me enseñaste de la señora que viene aquí a Pilates. So sorry to
no worries.
Go off the rails. She was 74.
I can't speak it, but I can kind of understand.
You understand? So she has a student that's 74 years old, right, and she looks in really good shape. And I mean, I told Lily, I want to film her doing the exercises so people can see how beneficial it is to you. Just at 74 years old, I would say 90% of 74-year-olds can't tie their shoelace, standing up. And this lady seems like she's all there.
Well, Mr. Pilates, there's a article and he does a quote, right? And he bends over, slaps the floor, stands up and goes, "Can the Pope do that?"
Right.
Right? Because it's like, all the people in power they're not healthy.
Yeah.
And he was always trying, he sent letters to all the presidents trying to get that. I mean, he tried to be, but he's sometimes his own worst enemy because doctors don't know anything. Well, that doesn't work in this world too much.
Yeah.
You have to work with everybody. So he was kind of his own worst enemy, but his system, he knew it was, and he said, and what's happening, the science is catching up with him. If you look at the science of movement and function and neurology and how the brain works and how we function, it's all basic. It's not exact, but it's very much supportive of what his system and how he did it. He's not, nobody's 100%, but he's probably 90 to 95% he was accurate.
Yeah.
And if you do this work and you do it, there's injuries, there's diseases, there's hereditary. But, if you look at him, he died at, 83, right? But he smoked a cigar and drank all the time. And he was still at 83, could do what most 20-year-olds couldn't do. And today, probably even more than most 20-year-olds, because most 20-year-olds, they don't go out and play when they're kids. They're just sitting here like this all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something like, you said it was pretty interesting what you said. Because, he said that he thought that doctors didn't know what they were saying, right? But it's, in a way, Pilates is like a real health care, right? And then there's ill care, which is maybe going to the doctors and they treat you when you're ill. And if you really want a health care, keep healthy all your life, like you're saying right now, up to 83-year-old, and you can do whatever you want. And I think that's the best way to go.
We have to do maintenance. You have to do maintenance. If you don't exercise,
you go down.
You go down. That's part of the, and when we're younger, we don't realize that because we're running around doing stuff. But as you get older, but if you do the work, it lasts for a lifetime.
Definitely. When you come back to Mérida, because I know you have to go later on today back to New York.
Yes, I come back in October.
For another certification?
Yep.
You're going to do another?
Well, no, we just started. So we come back. When I come back in October, I'm going to be doing the second part.
Okay. Because
when I come here, I do the basic and half the intermediate, and then when I come back, I do the other half of the intermediate and the advanced.
Okay.
And Lily's training to be a teacher of teachers. So when I come back, she'll be teaching, and I'll be, it's just like when I train the teachers to be teachers. Well, now I'm training her to be the teacher of teachers. So she teaches and I observe, and we talk and I help her understand it so that I cannot be here, so she can start to teach, because I can't be everywhere. And right, the whole point of this is, like I said, one seat at a time. I'm trying to train people that want to carry on the work and are passionate. We went out to dinner with all the teachers last night, and all we did was talk Pilates. It's like nothing, hardly anything else, because that's the passion.
It's kind of like similar to jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
In jiu-jitsu, have you ever tried jiu-jitsu?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Pilates, when he first went to New York, guess what he taught? Jiu-jitsu.
Really?
I have an ad from the 1920s where it says jiu-jitsu.
One of our producers, he's a jiu-jitsu instructor,
right? Because that was, so that.
Did he learn it from the Gracie family, or was it?
I'm not sure, but he started to eat that. Wait. Was it jiu-jitsu or
judo?
Or it's Japanese.
So jiu-jitsu comes from Japan,
right? So it was jiu-jitsu there.
Yeah, and then it moved to Brazil, right? It moved to Brazil from
yeah. So in the early part of this, the 1900s, before the Second World War, right? Jiu-jitsu was a popular thing. It was the Japanese way of self, to protect yourself.
Yeah, the history.
And there's a
there's a lot of different,
right? Yeah, but there's a whole
martial arts.
Well, he called it jiu-jitsu, whether it was, but there's a film of him self-defense. He was showing people, like, somebody come at you with a knife, what you do, come with a gun, how to knock people down, all that stuff. He has, there's an archival film of him teaching that.
Oh, wow.
With his brother on the rooftops from New York.
In boxing, jiu-jitsu, and stuff.
And there's also a film in the archives where he and his brother dress up as Roman gladiators.
Okay.
And they have a shield and a sword. They have the helmets, and they go at it. And I have the shields. I don't have the swords. The swords weren't there, but the shields were in the studio in Massachusetts. And there's like holes where they, it wasn't, when they hit it, it looks like a blade. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, let's pretend. They were
going at it. That's crazy. So it's like in that way, Lily's going to become your black belt here in Mexico.
Yes.
That she can certify.
She's the dojo.
She's
right?
the dojo.
She's the dojo here for that. And just like jujitsu, same thing. That's a generic term,
right?
You can't say anybody can go say I teach jujitsu, right?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of fake black belts there.
There's everything.
That's amazing. So she's going to be certified. You certified some basic instructors this time.
Well, I've probably certified. We've certified at least 20.
20 from here.
Here at least 20. Because when I come, it's not about let's get 100 people here and we're gonna.
No,
it's small. We take the time. We make sure that they understand it, and we progress it, and then that's what we're doing. So usually, the most I ever take is 15. Train, and some years we have more or less. It depends on the economy. It depends on a lot. The dollar. Everything.
Right.
So, but
because it's not cheap to train to get certified.
No, it's not. But I was explaining this to Lily. If you look at the average salary for in Mexico, not the U.S., but in Mexico, the average salary for somebody who is well trained, right, like college,
right.
I looked it up. I think it's 17 or 18,000.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's close to what you make as a Pilates teacher.
Right.
Okay. I think it's a month, right? So that's close to what you can make as a Pilates teacher. But as a Pilates teacher, that's college education. That's 4 years, sometimes 6 if you have a graduate, right? Pilates, it's the 3 week, I come for this period of time, right? So it's 9 days, and then you have the apprenticeship. So it takes you 6 months.
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Yes, you can then make decent amount of money.
Exactly. It's
not what you make in New York, but U.S. and there's always that difference. But it's the same thing in the U.S. What the cost for the college in the U.S. is much more, but you make
way more.
Yeah, but that's what you and if you like to move,
exactly.
This is it.
Exactly. So, you heard it here. The only certified Pilates studios is here in Mérida with Lily, a Pilates Workcenter. I'm sorry. And this is a OG of Pilates. You basically are keeping alive the real Pilates.
Right.
And we're going to put all your social, all your social networks here so everybody can see. We're definitely going to do another interview when you come back in October so we can catch up with all the new things that you're doing. It's been a pleasure to have you here. It's for me, it's just like the few hours that we were talking, it's just been I can write a book about it. There's a lot of information.
I've been writing a Pilates book for 20 years because there's so much information.
Yeah, you have to get it out there because people really have to know, what the real Pilates is. It's really, for me.
I have 3 books. They're just they're not in print anymore. I published a book with Romana called The Pilates Method of Body Conditioning. You can get it on Amazon for a couple of dollars.
Okay.
And it's the basic system. But back then, I did what Joe did. I worked with a Stamina, which was a manufacturer. They made it in China. Joe had a home reformer that folded in half. They made one. We made the chair. We made the barrels. We did all those things. And again, it sold for a while and then it stopped.
Right.
But so, that's one of the things. You can have all that stuff. So that's one of the books. Then I republished his 2 books together. There was 2 things that he published that I published as one book. And then one of the things that I published in 2000 was I published an archival book. So it's a book that's just all the archives, all the stuff that I got.
I'm just going, I wanted to just say goodbye to everybody, but something came up to my mind when you were saying that. Has ever a big company that does Pilates machines come up to you and say, can you tell us the guidelines to make a real reformer,
Well,
certified by the Pilates source, or
well, the manufacturer, see, Lily has, this manufacturer is called Gratz, Gratz.
these
And she's imported these from the U.S. So these are
the real.
This is the real deal. This is who I would use.
Okay.
At one point, I made equipment, but I made it out of wood, and I had Joe's original, so I copied Joe's original.
Because basically you have the patents for it, right?
Well, no, patents are over. Patents last 17 years, and they're done.
Okay.
So there's no patent. So but I had Joe's original, so I basically copied it, right, and made a reproduction. And I tried. This was back in the 90s, and nobody was interested. So it didn't last because I couldn't sell enough equipment because nobody was interested in the archival, which is a little different. It was wood. It was different.
Well, if I was a manufacturer, I would go to you immediately.
Well, but perfect example. The person that I sued, the manufacturer, I went to him and I tried to get him to work with me to make it, and he didn't want to do it.
Well, sorry, you guys.
And remember, he was the one that said if we made it today the way that Joe made it, we'd get sued.
Yeah.
But now he's trying to do it now.
Do exactly.
He's knocking this off, but it's not as good as this.
Got it. What's the brand of
Gratz?
Gratz?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Gratz.
Okay, Gratz. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna say goodbye to everybody. We'll get this on your YouTube channel also, because your following has to know what you're doing down here in Mexico.
Right.
All the good work you're doing.
Well, it'd be great because it's one seed at a time, and take our time, and then it'll last, and it'll be there.
And for everybody in the U.S., when you come down here in Mérida, because Mérida is a very popular tourist destination.
Yes, and if you want to if you're a classical person, come to Lily's because you'll get.
Yeah, you have to come down here. It's certified. It's the only place in Mexico you can come and do real Pilates. And
well, we call it Joe's Contrology.
Joe's Contrology. That's
where, because he called it Contrology, which is the study of control, right?
Okay.
That was the name. So that's what he called it. But it was the Pilates studio, but he taught Contrology. So what I've done is I've trademarked the name Joe's Contrology so that people know if you want to get Joe's work the way he did it, just, this is where you can come.
I really like better the Pilates source. I think that's a much cooler name.
Yes.
That's
when you have a trademark, McDonald's has more than one trademark.
Right.
Right. Yeah, the Happy Meal, that's
exactly.
So my Joe's Contrology is
part of it. So guys, come down here when you visit Mérida. Mérida is one of the best. Well, actually, it's the best tourist destination for all you guys that want to come down to Mexico. It's super safe. It's a great place to visit. And when you come down here and you want to do real Pilates, this is the place. So everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. For all our local viewers, we're going to have this in subtitles. And thank you.
And
have a great trip back to New York. And we'll see you back in October.
All right, great.
All right.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You guys. See you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Lily. And that's great. Great interview, man.
Thank you.
Loved it.